Here are some things all young people should know about money. So a couple of weeks ago, I went to San Diego to the ASU GSV Summit, where we basically heard from tons of ed techs in the industry, finance, etc. And this is everything I learned that would be applicable to everyone watching this video. Essentially, young people under the age of 30, under 25, or even students. So I'm going to look down on my notes to the notes that I made during the conference, but these are the things that I think are most important for young people to essentially know about money. If you do econ, then you're probably going to know already. So, number one, what is commodity money? This basically refers to money backed by physical materials, so stuff like gold, silver, copper, and it's basically used as a medium of exchange. And the good thing about this is it has universal acceptance. It's accepted anywhere. Number two, the uses of money. The first use of money is as a medium of exchange. The second is as unit of account. So basically, it's basically just a standard numerical value attached to goods and services. The third use of money is a store of value. So it basically helps individuals conserve their wealth. And finally, money is a standard of deferred payment. So basically, you can purchase goods right now and pay for them later. So like a barber. So you also need to know about the two things money can buy. You can either buy tangible assets or non-tangible assets. So tangible assets are things where ownership can be transferred or the item can be returned to the seller. It can be manufactured. There's no gap between the production and the consumption of the goods. The goods can be manufactured identically, and examples of this are like this jumper I'm wearing, the glasses I'm wearing, etc. Whereas intangible services include things that are non-refundable. The ownership cannot be transferred. They cannot be manufactured or made in a factory. This can be stuff like healthcare or legal counsel. The next thing you need to know is about supply and demand. So this is probably the easiest concept. Basically, when there is a low supply of products, like here's an example in the UK, there's not many Cheetos, flaming hot Cheetos in the UK because you can only get them from America. And there's high demand for the hot Cheetos in the UK, the Cheeto price will be increased. It will hike up because at the moment I know that these American candy places are selling it for £20 per packet, whereas in America you'd get them for $2 a packet, and this is because of supply and demand. Here we have less supply of the Cheetos compared to over there, and we also have more demand for the Cheetos, whereas over there they've got a lot of supply and they've also got demand, and that causes an increase in prices. It's the same the other way around. If we have a high supply of the products and a low demand for them, the products will be cheaper. And obviously this varies because of import-export prices for the Cheetos, but that's just an example, a simple thing I gave you. The next thing you need to know about are assets and liabilities. So assets are basically something that you own and you can sell to make money, or something that provides you with an income. So if I say my friend Ozair is an asset to me, because he is, he's benefiting me in many ways. So like I know I cannot sell him, however he did promise to get me a private jet. But like an asset can be a stock, or you've got a stock or share in a company. An asset can also be a house, but it's basically something that will appreciate in value and give you a return on investment. Whereas we also have liabilities, and you do not want to have liabilities. Liabilities can be things like loans, getting a car because a car will depreciate in value, debt. All of those things are liabilities which decrease in value and which don't give you which give you a negative return on investment. So essentially, the more assets you have, the richer you are. The next thing you should know is about banks. So essentially, banks want you to store your money with them, and you might be asking, how do they actually make money in the process? But banks are always about putting in, so they're all about depositors and borrowers. So a depositor is basically you and I will put £100 into the bank. Now, a borrower would come to the bank and ask for £100. So they're essentially borrowing your money. So the borrower will ask for your money, well, ask the bank for £100. The bank will give them £100. But the bank will essentially make the borrower pay interest, and let's say the interest is £9. So the borrower will the borrower will have to pay the bank back £109 with the £9 interest. And what will happen is that the bank will make, I think, £4 profit, and we would receive £5 from the bank. So when we deposited £5 into the bank is giving us a return of, when we deposited £100 into the bank is giving us a return of £5 more, which is interest. Now, the clever thing about this is when interest rates are low, the saving rate, so the rate at which people save, is less because they have less return on investment on putting into their banks. But the borrowing, so if someone wants to borrow, they will have a lower interest rate, meaning that they wouldn't be charged as much as they would previously. Whereas if we have high interest rates, it encourages people to save or put more into banks, but it also has negative impact on borrowing because the price to borrow increases more. So the price to borrow increases more. Interest is basically a monetary charge for the privilege of borrowing. So when you borrow money from a bank, you are expected to pay interest on your loan, and banks want you to do this because they make money from it. The next thing that is really, really important is the difference between a debit card and a credit card. So a debit card is basically allows you to spend the money that you currently have. It's linked to your bank account, so you're spending your own money. A credit card is when you essentially have a credit limit. So let's say I've got a credit limit of £1,000. I cannot go over this credit limit of £1,000 per month, and I have to pay this back in full. I'll have to pay this back fully at the end of the month if I don't want to incur any charges. Now, credit card fees and charges are quite expensive, so you do not want to get a credit card first of all if you know you won't be able to pay it back on time. So it's basically just borrowing the money, and if you aren't able to pay it back, you're in a problem. But I would always say get a credit card because it has a lot more advantages than disadvantages. Number one, you're protected. So let's say you get scammed. Let's say you buy something and it's faulty. You're protected with your credit card, but you're not protected from your debit card. So if something goes wrong, you call your credit card company and they will help you get out of the mess. The next thing is credit cards often allow you to get cash back. So you can get anywhere from 1% to 5% cash back depending on who your credit card service is with, and this cashback can be in the form of cash, or you can even claim Avios points or airline miles, things like that, which can contribute to you getting a first class seat. And it's very easy. I know there are a lot of credit card companies that allow you to get 50,000 Avios points, like Amex Gold or Platinum, and if you spend around £2,000 in the first month, they'll give you this bonus. And if you refer friends, you can also get this bonus. So it is extremely good, but it's only good if you pay it off at the end of the month, because if you don't, you're in trouble. But it has a lot more benefits than the negatives, so make sure you pay it off and only spend what you know you have and what you know you can pay back at the end of the month. Now, everyone at the age of 18 will have a credit score, so you can check services like Experian or other ones, and you should always check your credit score, because this can basically let you know how much you can borrow. It also tells you whether your score is excellent or bad, and it basically shows you your credit worthiness, and it basically either prevents you from getting certain credit cards or it allows you to get certain credit cards. Now, obviously, the credit cards with better perks are for those for the people that are more responsible with their money, whereas the credit cards, there are other types of credit cards which can help you build your credit score. Now, so you need to make sure that you do these couple of things to ensure that you have a healthy credit score. Number one, keep checking your credit score to ensure that it's on the right path to 999, which is the top in the UK. You need to pay that, make sure that all of your bills are paid on time every month, because if they're not paid on time, then that leads to a decreased credit score. You cannot overuse your credit limit. You cannot go over your credit limit, because you don't want to do that. Your credit score is going to go down. You cannot apply to multiple credit cards in one go. Now, this is really, really important, because this is something that I did on my 18th birthday, which I shouldn't have done. Do not apply for a credit card. You apply for one, do not apply for 2, 3, 4, 5, because they basically they do hard checks on your credit score, and if they do more hard checks, then decrease your credit score. And finally, do not cancel your credit card if you're not using it. Now, let's go back onto the interest rates. You need to remember that interest rates are not fixed. They do not stay the same. So interest rates can be flexible. So they can depend on the credit score, job security, tenure, loan amount, demand and supply, and relationship with the lender. So this is when I'm talking about borrowing. So job security, like a lender, they won't trust you with the money if you have an unstable job. So this is the case for, let's say, me, who I'm self-employed. Do I have a sustainable job? No, because let's just say I'm a freelancer. No, because I'll be getting different X amount of money per month. So a steady income is basically needed to get a loan. And then you have something called a tenure. Basically, that's the time period within which you have to basically repay the loan. Now, a shorter tenure may basically mean that you have a lower interest rate, whereas a higher one means a higher one, etc. Now, the final few things that I want to touch upon are inflation. So inflation is one big reason why we should invest. Basically, inflation is the change in prices of goods and services. So let's say the current inflation rate is 6%. Next year, whatever you're buying will be 6% more. Now, what you need to watch out for, let's say the interest rate is 6% and banks are giving you an interest rate of 4%. When you put your money into the bank, you'll get a 4% return on the money that you put in. But the inflation rate is 6%, so you're missing out on that 2%. You're basically losing, your money is depreciating in value by 2%. So how can we recompensate for this loss? You're going to have to try beating inflation and start investing. So that means you're putting your money into something that will grow in value. So this can include things like stocks, bonds, houses, like property, etc. Now, why should you do this? Is because you need to beat the inflation rate. And by doing this, you're going to have a long-term return on investment on your money that you put in. So there is no minimum age that you can start investing. You can start investing under your parents and start as early as possible. So what is interesting is you could do something called compound investing and put money into something like £50 a week into the S&P 500. But let's say you don't have that money, and let's just say you only have £100. To show you what compounding investing does is that if you put £100 into, let's say, a market a index fund which has an 8% interest compound annually, in 50 years that £100 would turn to £4,690.16. So now imagine if you did £100 a week. Imagine what that would go up to in 50 years. Now, the final thing I want to talk about are bonds, equity, and mutual funds. Right, so a bond is a type of loan that you would give a company or the government. And in exchange for these bonds, they promise to pay you a fixed interest rate annually. And that's why they're called fixed investments. These are paid monthly, quarterly, or annually. There are two types of bonds: government bonds, which are also known as treasury bonds. They're issued to fund state and federal projects. They have a very low risk because they're issued by the government. Hence, the rate of interest is lower than the others offered. We then have corporate bonds. They are issued by companies to fund business expansion or specifically for a particular project. Now, compared to the government bonds, they provide higher returns, but they are more risky. Now, these are really, really easy to sell compared to the government bonds, but it's not as easy as withdrawing money just from a savings account. Equity. So equity is basically shares or stocks in a company. Now, when you purchase equity of a company, a small percentage of their company becomes yours. And these shares are basically traded in the stock market, and you can sell these at higher prices compared to what you bought them for. Now, these have very high liquidity. These have very high liquidity because they're traded on the market in high volumes. And finally, you have a mutual fund. So it's basically like a big basket with shares, with bonds from several different companies or the government. And you basically start pooling your money with other investors. And you allow an expert to create and buy this basket of your shares and bonds. And they basically help you on your behalf. So when you buy a mutual fund, you basically own a small proportion of the basket based on whatever you invest. Now, again, you can sell these at any time, but it's recommended to stay with them for a long period of time to make a good return. There are 4 types of mutual funds: equity funds, debt funds, hybrid funds, and solution-orientated funds. So equity funds, they basically invest the majority of money into company shares. You then have debt funds, and debt funds invest the majority of the money into fixed income securities like corporate bonds and government securities and treasury bills. Then you have hybrid funds. Now these invest into both debt. That invests into both debt and equity instruments to balance it, strike as a balance. And finally, you have solution-orientated funds, and these are for building specific funds like education. These are specific. These are for building specific goals, like building funds for children's education or marriage or stuff like that. Anyway, I hope this has been useful for you, and a lot of you have been asking for this in the comments. So yeah, hopefully you have learned something from this. But yeah, see you guys in my next video. Bye.